Somewhere in America, a phone is about to ring.
Welcome back to Shared Humanity. My name is Nelba Márquez-Greene, and in this podcast and video series, I have a moment to interview the humans behind the headlines of gun violence in a moment in history where all too often we talk about everything but our shared humanity. My hope is that through these stories, it gives you new perspective and information and moves you to action. Today's guest is Kim Rubio. Kim is a mother, survivor, and activist, changing the landscape of possibility for gun violence prevention and survivorship in the United States. She is a sought-after speaker, and we are fortunate, as we are with all of our guests, to have her here today. On May 24th, 2022, an armed gunman entered Robb Elementary School. He murdered 19 children and 2 educators. The spouse of one of those educators died soon after. Among the victims was Lexi, Kim's daughter. Kim, how would you introduce yourself to the audience listening today?
I would say my name is Kimberly Rubio and I am Lexi's mom. It is how I have been introducing myself for more than 2 years now. Lexi is a victim of the Uvalde school shooting. It happened on May 24th, 2022.
And if you had to describe your grief today, I tell people that, long after the cameras leave a heavily covered tragedy, grief persists. If you had to describe your grief today, how would you describe it?
I don't know if I ever really sit with my own grief. I feel like I'm constantly running away from that feeling of it coming to the surface, especially as a mom, because I'm also dealing with my children's grief, my surviving children and my husband. And I was up at 3 a.m. talking to my oldest son today. So it never stops. It's all consuming.
Never stops and all consuming sounds like an accurate description. I know one of your favorite things to talk about is Lexi. Can you tell us about Lexi?
Yes. Lexi was the light of our lives. She is the youngest girl. She was the peacemaker, the one that everybody got along with at all times. She was intelligent, straight A student. On the morning of her death, she received the Good Citizen Award. She was the child every parent wants, the student every teacher wants. Athletic, she played basketball and softball, and she played soccer when she was younger and was looking forward to playing volleyball when she got to 7th grade. And driven, she liked to talk about American politics, women's rights. At a young age, we were having conversations about women in positions of leadership. So just a force.
How would you like for us to remember her?
I definitely strive to have Lexi remembered for more than just the tragedy. I want her to be remembered as the fun, loving 10-year-old she was, and also to be tied with change that is already happened and change that will come in the future.
You're a part of a number of initiatives in her memory. And can you share some of those initiatives with some of our listeners, things that you do to continue Lexi's legacy?
Mm-hmm. Here in Uvalde, we have Lexi's Legacy Run. It is a 5K we have every year right before her birthday. This year, we just had her 3rd annual. And I work with Lives Robbed. It was formed by 3 moms who lost children in the Uvalde tragedy. And we work hard on activism, both at the state level and the national level.
Speaking of working hard and being activists alongside, yourself and your family, but alongside your other moms from that same tragedy, in your opinion, what would it take to end gun violence? What is the most actionable legislation we could enact to save lives if you had a magic wand and could wave it tomorrow?
A complete ban on assault weapons. Okay. Those type of weapons don't belong in the hands of the average citizen.
And you've stood by several initiatives and activities to kind of support an assault weapons ban.
Absolutely. We've fought long and hard, and there have been many before me who have been attempting this same goal, and we're going to continue to fight.
Do you remember where you were on December 14th?
I do. I was at work, but I remember getting home the most. I remember being at home and sitting on the couch with my husband and just watching continuous coverage.
Yeah.
Just well into the next morning. At that point, Lexi was 1 year old. And I remember thinking, I can't imagine what those parents are going through. We'd seen school shootings, but never with children so young and so many children in a state where you wouldn't expect it, in a community where you wouldn't expect it. And it was at that point that I think it really hit home that if this could happen to Sandy Hook, this could happen anywhere.
I remember where I was when Aurora happened, similar to you, holding my children the summer before, December 14th, 2012, saying, turn off the TV. Let's just take the kids to the pool so we don't, and thinking if it could happen there, gee, that could happen anywhere. I don't think people understand that we aren't just experiencing our own tragedy. We are seeing multiple tragedies that are impacting our well-being, and that one day it could be anyone's turn.
Mm-hmm.
Latino, Hispanic communities are impacted by gun violence in a very unique way, but often not at the table when it comes to change making, when it comes to activism, and that could be for many reasons. Tell me, how do you think we can make legislative leaders more responsive to Latino communities, but also how can we become more involved?
Yeah. Well, what's unique to Lives Robbed is that all three moms are Hispanic. And that's definitely somewhere to start. Follow us on Instagram. See all of the updates. We often post what can be done in that moment, from someone who is only able to send a few emails to someone who's able to travel. We can strategize with any individual. Okay. Second, I think we just need to be at the forefront. We deserve a seat at the table. I always say yes when I'm invited somewhere because I recognize that one day that invitation could stop. And right now, the conversation is there and the pressure needs to be put on. I was at the White House recently, and I was with a group of all Latinos, and we were having the first ever conversation in the White House with the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. And I know that wasn't where it was going to stop. It was a great conversation. It went well over because, us Latinos, we can talk. And I know that we'll be returning again and again to continue to keep this at the forefront of people's minds.
I actually saw that, which is why I asked the question, and I was so proud. Well, I had two feelings. I thought, oh, this is horrible that we actually have to have this conversation, but I was deeply proud to see so many faces that I recognize and admire. One of the other things that you have done in order to have a seat at the table is run for office. You actually ran for mayor of Uvalde. Can you tell us a little bit about what made you do that, what convinced you that that was the right thing to do, and what that process was like for people who are listening who are thinking, that's not a way I can be involved?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that people often think that change isn't possible because they just see it as something so large, right? Something like at the state or national level, but change starts from the bottom up. So local office, we deserve a seat at that table too. How many board meetings did I go to? How many city council meetings did I go to? And county meetings? All three of these entities had a part to play on what happened on May 24th, 2022. Why wasn't I aware of, the Columbine locks? Why wasn't I putting pressure to have more exterior fences and lockdowns whenever we have chases that came through town? These are all questions I look back at now, but they're movements that parents can take where they're from without having to do anything too big. So yeah, and in Uvalde, we had the seat open for mayor. We were having issues with accountability and transparency. And I wanted to be, the change that I was seeking. And I thought, what better way? I'm going to run for office. It was a year after we lost Lexi. And unfortunately, I was not successful, but I also learned a lot. And I definitely felt that a lot of my support comes from outside of the community. So I think next time I'll probably aim a little higher. and I know this is the last time I'll run for office.
Let's talk about that sentence you said, and I know I wasn't successful. I know you didn't win the election, but let's define success a little differently. You took a chance to run for office and put yourself out there for a very vulnerable position, opened yourself up to criticism from your own community, opened yourself up to what I'm sure was a deeply painful to experience a loss there, and then run for office on the platform of wanting to make communities safer and hear a no, but still stand and say, I'm going to set my sights bigger, actually doesn't sound like lack of success to me. It sounds pretty courageous, and I am deeply grateful for your fortitude.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I don't think people understand that often when there's tragedy in a community, and we see this over and over again, what people on the outside believe is that there's tragedy in a community, and then everyone will come together in this kumbaya moment and line up in agreement, at the very least to support victims of the bad thing that happened, if not for long-term change and activism. But when you really think about it, the chaos that ensues is profound, right? There is fractures in support, in mental health services, in financial support. There's fractures on what to do next on multiple levels. There's fractures sometimes when there's large populations of victims among families. And I don't think people outside of communities like ours understand that, and how deeply painful it is to carry your own loss plus systems that fracture.
Definitely. I think while it was deeply hurtful to be villainized in a community that I grew up in because I'm asking for change to save lives, I also try to take it from a very logical point of view, and I understand that everybody lost something that day. If you weren't directly impacted, you lost a sense of security. And that does something to people. It strikes fear, and it's not fear that they can sit with. So instead, these individuals kind of want to sweep it under the rug. That's what works best for them. And I'll continue to fight, not just for my children, but for their children as well.
I know that to be the case. What advice would you give to someone who maybe is sitting at home and wants to be a part of the gun violence prevention work, but doesn't know kind of where to start or what to do, or is looking for that right thing, that right group, that right way to get in? What would you say to them?
I would definitely encourage them. I know it feels daunting, and I myself, when I got into this, had no idea what I was doing, and I was trying to navigate the gun violence prevention space. But I would say start on social media, start following some of these organizations, and you'll get a feel for what feels right. Maybe it's not somebody from your state, maybe it's from a different state, but you for some reason connect with those individuals. That's where I would start, because I've met so many people, and while I appreciate everyone, there's just some that you're drawn to, and that's what works best for you.
I always tell people, don't wait for perfection, right? Don't wait for the perfect group. Don't wait for the perfect advocate. And find your own skill. Maybe your skill is writing petitions. Maybe your skill is helping a 501c3 organization that's getting started, file their paperwork. Whatever skill set you have, match it with an organization that has a need and use it, because we want long-term people. We don't want people coming in and getting excited, looking for perfection. And then when perfection doesn't happen, say, well, you know what? Let me move on to this other thing, right? So find what you're good at and aim for sustainability, for long-term work, because unfortunately, this will be long-term work. How did you get started? How did you decide there was that moment? Was there a process or was it instinctual?
I don't know if I ever made a conscious decision, but I knew that I couldn't sit with my grief. I had to do something, and I didn't want other moms to experience what I was feeling. So I testified before Congress 3 days before we buried Lexi, and it just kind of picked up after that. Marches, rallying, going to DC, going to Texas, the Texas Capitol during the legislative session this last time, and gearing up for this year. So I don't know if I ever just decided. It just happened. It was what I could do with my grief, how I carry my grief.
Oftentimes, and this is another thing I talk about with guests, couples grieve very differently and participate in different forms of activism. I also did a lot of going to DC in the beginning, and my husband stayed home. And he wanted to do a lot of things in the arts, right? He wanted to continue writing songs for Anna and making music for Anna and teaching where he was teaching. He needed that, and I needed something different. In many ways, this is what happens with couples. Do you find that you and your husband are the same?
In the very beginning, I feel like we all were, both my husband and my kids, in how we approached our grief, and we were talking about it. And then it kind of changed, and everybody in year 2 has a different path now.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I always think about it as I felt like I was somebody that was a little more open, at least with my husband, and my husband was a little bit more quiet. And now he'll talk a little bit more about his bad days, where I feel like it's very personal and vulnerable, and I don't like to have those discussions. But yes, I travel a lot, and he chooses to stay home and be here with the kids. He takes pride in making sure that her gravesite is to perfection always. He's out there every day. He picks out stuff on Amazon for her, solar lights. We're already starting the Christmas decorations, and that's how he shows his love for her, and I appreciate that.
And for people who are listening who are also victims of gun violence, it's really important to understand that too is activism. There's no right or wrong way, right? If you are going to DC, that is wonderful. If you are home and making sure that gravesite is pristine, that is also valuable and important. And make sure you're not comparing yourself to other people, and understanding that too is valuable. That's so good that you said. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
How do you practice self-care?
I got back into running recently. It's something that I picked up in 2020, and I continued for the first year after I lost Lexi, but I did fall off after that. And now come July, I decided, no, I need this. I miss it. Let's just see if I even still love it. And turns out I do. And I've set some goals for myself this upcoming year.
I am again in awe because I tried running for a little bit, got a blade of grass in my eye, needed to have it removed at the hospital, and then just decided that is my sign that running is not for me. But I think I do need to revisit some kind of, and again, I'm in awe. How can we best, if somebody listening and saying, I really want to support the Rubio family. I want to support the Rubio family specifically. How would someone best support you?
By remembering Lexi. It's one of my greatest fears that she'll be forgotten. So following all my social media, staying up to date, lives robbed, continuing her legacy.
Do you have a foundation for her?
I don't, not yet. It's a conversation I've had with my husband, and trying to figure out what that might be. Have some ideas. For now, we've just put a lot of our effort into Lives Robbed and the Run.
I want to, if it makes any sense at all, tell you how impossible I think it is for Lexi to be forgotten. The amount of work you have done. I actually thought you did have a foundation, because every time I go to Lives Robbed, there is an art or a something, a run, or there is a something. I think the amount of work the moms in that group and other moms have done to remember, and I don't know if it's any comfort to hear, I don't know that anyone in America could ever forget Uvalde. 12 years after Newtown, I have flown to different states and have heard, you are Anna's mom, right? Because people don't forget, and it will be the same with Lexi. I do know that to be true. And in terms of anything else you might want to share with us to let the American public know that sharing these stories is important, but sharing these stories without them taking action is not much more than voyeurism, right? We don't share these stories so that people can peek into our lives and then sit back and go to next. We share these stories with the hope that someone then will be inspired to take action. If you had something to say to a listener, what would it be?
I think it would be that I have been in your shoes. I have been listening to a podcast or watching the news as another tragedy unfolds, another mass shooting unfolds. And I can remember thinking that I can't imagine what that parent must be feeling. And then my day goes on. And while I remember, I didn't do enough. And I want people to get involved, not just voting responsibly. I mean, actively involved, because this is affecting everybody and it's only a matter of time before it directly impacts you. That's what I would tell your audience.
Or someone you love, right? If it's not you, it will be someone in your network. I described you in my introduction as a survivor and an activist changing the landscape of possibility for gun violence prevention and survivorship in the United States. And I want to know where in that landscape you have found hope.
I think I found hope in everyday people, not just elected officials, not just people with other nonprofits and organizations, everyday people, people that message me when I encounter them in public spaces and they remember and they say, I'm doing this differently. I'm voting this way I didn't used to. I decided to follow this. I decided to start emailing my senators. It's this hope, this change that's coming, this wave that's coming, this momentum. People have said enough.
And that has come in large part due to the lion's share of work. Many of the families in Uvalde, in Aurora, in Parkland, in Sandy Hook, and all of these places, and in everyday community violence have done in sharing their stories and encouraging people to join them. Thank you for sharing your time with us, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me and letting me share Lexi's story.
Thank you for listening. Shared Humanity is produced by the Yale School of Public Health. Follow us on social media at Yale SPH and learn more at sph.yale.edu/sharedhumanity. Thank you to the Yale Porvu Center and Yale Broadcast Studio for their support.
Somewhere in America, a phone is about to ring. Somewhere